And I get that too. I get people and I tell them all the time, like, listen, you don't need permission from me to spend your money. But what I can do of service to you is say, if the market's down, for instance, maybe we push off buying a new car till next year. Think of me as your financial friend. And, I'm going to help you make sound decisions, but I'm not here to tell you not to spend your money. And I don't want my clients to, I want them to live a life that's it's balanced, and leave your kids money, but also take care of yourself. And that's the bottom line.
Hi there. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Leah Alter.
And I'm Joanna Ehresman.
And this is WomenShare, a celebration of women in financial services.
And today we are sitting down with Marcia Miller of RFG Advisory. Marcia brings more than 25 years of experience in financial services to her role as a wealth advisor at RFG. She and her team focus on simplifying the complexities of wealth management for their clients so that their clients can focus on their passions. Marcia is also a podcaster, hosting the Making Hay podcast geared toward financial advice for veterinarians. So we can't wait to discuss that in a bit more detail. Outside of that specific client niche, she shares our passion for helping women take control of their financial futures and breaking barriers in this male-dominated industry. So we are in for such a great conversation today. And Marcia, welcome to WomenShare.
Hi, Leah. Hi, Joanna. So nice to see you guys. I love what you guys are doing. I love the name of your podcast and the tagline for sure, because what woman doesn't want to be celebrated, right? So thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
And we are so excited that you're here. We want to take a moment to say thank you for this episode's Pay It Forward sponsor, RFG Advisory. Through a Pay It Forward sponsorship, past WomenShare guests can support another woman's story in a future episode. So Abby Salome, Chief Growth Officer over at RFG, joined us a few months ago. So we just want to say a big thank you to Abby and the RFG team for sponsoring this episode of WomenShare. And RFG Advisory is an award-winning support platform for independent advisors, empowering advisors to focus on what they do best, serving their clients. So you can learn more about them at rfgadvisory.com. And Marcia, we're just so excited to dive in. There's so much to talk about. Let's talk about your practice. Let's start there. And really what led you to launch the Making Hay podcast?
Yeah, well, being in the financial services industry for 25 plus years, my path has pivoted a few times, but I'm serving, pre-retirees, retirees, physicians, women, and veterinarians. So I have a diverse, group of clients. But over time, I noticed that there was a trend with my veterinarian clients, and they, kind of face unique challenges. I was able to help them, their profession. Kind of unlike human doctors, I feel like they were overlooked, and they just have the biggest hearts. And they take care of animals, and so they're balancing a lot of things. And you may not know this, but they have a very high level of burnout. And so I just felt like with all of the experiences they have, I saw the need to create a space to kind of support them directly. And that's how my podcast came to life. It's a platform where, I discuss challenges they have. I can share stories of financial insight, talk with other veterinarians and some of the challenges that faces their world, and hopefully bring in, celebrations and talk about the challenges, as I said. But also the goal is to make money an easy conversation and make it approachable so they can focus on what matters most, is caring for animals and dealing with their own personal lives.
Oh, that's great. And I think the comment of burnout, I have a high school friend who is a veterinarian, and specifically in a rural area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And was saying, like, there's just not enough practitioners out there to keep up with the demand. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but there's about 80+% of veterinarians are female. So we are serving women primarily in this niche. And I think coming out of school now, it's in the 90 percentiles and above.
Wow.
So, they just need a lot of support, and I'm here for it.
So then has kind of word spread and you're serving more of them virtually too, or is there a concentration of veterinarians in
Yeah.
your local area? Just curious.
Yeah, it's
on how it's grown.
definitely a nationwide practice. I've traveled around the United States to different conferences and so forth and speaking. Just had a speaking engagement at the Georgia Veterinary Vet South is the name of that. So it's their medical association. So yeah, it is spreading. Definitely it's a virtual part of my practice, which is kind of cool as well. And, I try to make myself even a little more available because of their schedules. A lot of them work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And, 10 plus hours a day. Like I said, a lot of the practices, like the emergency care practices, are open 24 hours a day. So it's interesting. It really is.
Yeah. Well, and kudos to you, because Leah and I were just on a previous meeting and talking about, the hundreds, if not thousands of advisors that we've worked with, but I have never met an advisor that's specialized in serving veterinarians. And it sounds like there's such a need. So,
and to my point, they're overlooked, right?
Yes.
So, yeah. So that was where I fell right in and just said, this is kind of, and it's kind of home to me. I don't want to go too much on the backstory. You can listen to my first podcast if you want to hear more about that. But my grandparents were farmers. And so I grew up going to their house as I was growing up, and my grandfather had cows. So I have this like strange love for cows. And I grew up I was the oldest granddaughter of a large family, and I was throwing hay off of the back of his pickup truck to the cows. And so there we have making hay.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the authenticity probably really resonates, right? I know you don't just serve exclusively veterinarians, but specifically the podcast audience and that topic. That's really cool.
Right.
Well, and you shared you're passionate about helping your clients build wealth with purpose. So, I know there's behavioral finance and that sort of thing, but just curious to hear, how do you foster that conversation with a new client, and how do you keep coming back to this purpose part of their wealth throughout your relationship?
Yeah, for me, fostering purpose begins with listening deeply. Every financial advisor, male or female, knows the importance of, getting to know your client, gathering the facts, making a plan, making the numbers work. But really, it's about creating a space where clients can feel seen and heard and feel comfortable sharing, their hopes and dreams and fears. What are they afraid of? And I think you have to ask the right questions to be able to pull that out of a client and let them become comfortable that you really want to know them. It's like, I want to do business for the right people, and I want to take care of them in a fantastic way. For example, some clients, they want to work part-time while their kids are small. How do we figure that out in the financial planning process? Or maybe they want to retire young, or they want to, move across country as they get close to retirement to be able to pick their grandkids up from school 2 days a week. Whatever it is, I want to make those dreams a reality. And I think, the number one fear is running out of money. But oftentimes as advisors, we miss the opportunity to teach clients how they can use their wealth to live purposefully now, in the moment. We may or may not have forever. And then, I also see a lot of my long-term clients who are getting older, late 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s, who've accumulated tremendous wealth. And, it's just grown exponentially because as we get older, we stop doing a lot of the activities, right? So the wealth tends to, aggressively grow. And that's wonderful. That's a wonderful thing to say, okay, great. I passed away with X millions of dollars. But if you could go ahead and enjoy it in those peak years of happiness, what would that look like? And so we try to purposefully build that into each and every plan. And it's an evolving thing. A lot of times you start this conversation with people, they don't even know how to answer the questions,
I can imagine. Yeah. It's not typical that you'd probably get into that, but it's so important as we speak to it.
Well, and I feel like in my own family with my parents, they're so focused on leaving something for me. And I'm like, thank you. And please spend your money that you've worked so hard for. And let's just enjoy this time in your life where you're retired and you're not tied to something, and, you're healthy and active. Let's spend the money.
Right. I totally get that and agree 100%. And a lot of times as people get older, when they're looking at their money, they get more and more conservative.
Yeah.
And they get conservative with spending. They get conservative with how they're investing it. And when I'm working with someone like your parents, I would say, how much of this, if we free up, hey, this is how much we're leaving the kids, and let's aggressively invest that, or more aggressively invest it. We don't need that all sitting on the sideline in cash. You're going to leave your kids more money by investing it on their time horizon, not your time horizon. And then let's kind of bucket some money over here for y'all to spend and do, give it to them while you're living. I mean, what joy is that to be able to see your kids, take some of the money and, give them some of the money and enjoy it and pay off their mortgage or invest it for themselves, or the grandkids not having to have college debt. So there's just all kinds of ways we can look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And making memories, right? Taking vacations together and getting to spend that time together without being stressed out of like how we're going to pay for it.
Exactly.
Or like what are we sacrificing? And I think a lot of times that there's not those conversations. So your clients are really lucky that you put that first and forward in your conversations with them, so that those are the boxes that are getting checked, knowing that there's a long-term plan also.
Yeah. I mean, money's really just a tool. It helps us create the life that we envision. And when you start having that switch in your mind, as an investor, that this is a tool for my happiness and my family's happiness, that's when you have the freedom to do some of those things, like taking your family on a vacation to create those memories.
Yeah.
So, yes.
It's not just about conserving for future security and kind of having that fear-based.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
You've said that helping women approach their financial future with confidence is very important to you. We love that. That's obviously very important to us as well. So we'd love to hear for you, like, what's working for you in terms of reaching those women clients and having specifically those conversations around financial confidence.
Yeah, I found that approaching women with empathy and clarity makes all the difference. We just want to be seen and heard and understood as women. And many women tell me that they feel judged around money. They feel judged around their money choices and their financial choices, and intimidated is a big word I hear a lot. I don't understand this. It's, finance is complex. And so I focus on breaking things down in a way where it does feel like money's approachable and, definitely a judgment-free zone. I think that women, if you're in a household, women are spending more money than men do. We buy the groceries a lot of times, married or single, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're in charge of managing schedules, making all these decisions financially. And then that can lead to guilt when a woman wants to spend money on herself, and, I tell my clients it's okay to spend money on things that you value as long as we've planned on it. And, the B word that no one wants to hear, it's budget. And no one wants to hear about a budget, but a budget really, it's not restrictive. What it is, it's freeing. It removes the guilt and replaces it with confidence. Like, yeah, I can go shopping because this is built into my budget every month or year or whatever. I can do this. I can spend money on myself, and self-care is so important. I could go off for a long time on that. I'm kind of embracing my own personal self-care era, I guess. Like that's the phase I'm in, like I've got to take better care of myself. And if we don't, we're not going to be there for the people we love. So,
well, and I was going to say on the same lines, like it's sort of designed that way to make us feel guilty, right? Like the system is not, again, we could go down a rabbit hole here, but the system's designed to make us feel like we shouldn't spend money on ourselves, or that self-care isn't important, that we're always should be taking care of other people. So one way to kind of buck the system, right, is flipping that and prioritizing our self-care. And to your point, budgeting for things that are important to us that might seem frivolous to other people.
Right. So true. So true. My aim is just to help the women realize that financial planning isn't about judgment. It's about what are the possibilities? How can I do this? How could I make this happen in my budget? And then we look at it, and then we have the numbers to support it. The numbers are important. It's important to look at everything and make sure that this is okay and have a check-in, with a plan. Are we on track? Are we doing okay? But if all you're doing is saving every penny you have and your life is miserable, who wants to sign up for that?
No.
It's not going to work.
Well, and back to your earlier point about purpose, right? It would be, I think, a very empowering conversation. So I imagine if I'm sitting across from you and you're my advisor and you're talking about what's meaningful to me, and maybe it is some things that are about giving to myself and treating myself well, it's like that's living with purpose for me, right? And everybody's purpose is different. So that's just a really strong connection. And I can see how that leads to, like, the more clients experience it, the more they see the value in, like, okay, this is a loop of being really transparent and honest, and then spending against it, planning for it, and continuing to use money as a tool to do what I want to do in my life.
Exactly. It's so freeing. It's so freeing to do that, and just makes life rewarding.
Yeah.
I think people also look to their advisors for permission to do that.
Yeah.
I've done that with my own advisors, where I went to them with like, okay, this is going to seem crazy, and be ready for them to like shut it down. And of course they're wonderful, and they don't, and they're like, okay, let's make it work. And that is obviously one, you're working with the right advisor when they said, okay, let's make it work, versus shutting it down, unless it's a horrible idea. I guess there's some of those. But I think, a lot of people look to their advisors as like a way to say, is it okay for me to do this? And to your point, that transparency of what's important, what is that bigger purpose, is so important in those conversations.
Right. And I get that too. I get people, and I tell them all the time, like, listen, you don't need permission from me to spend your money. But what I can do of service to you is say, if the market's down, for instance, maybe we push off buying a new car till next year. Think of me as your financial friend. And, I'm going to help you make sound decisions, but I'm not here to tell you not to spend your money. And I don't want my clients to, I want them to live a life that's it's balanced, and leave your kids money, but also take care of yourself. And that's the bottom line.
Love that. So Marcia, you've been in the industry for more than 25 years and share our passion, like we said at the intro, for helping to break down barriers for women. Would love to just hear your perspective on reflecting when you first entered the industry. What was your experience? What did you see? And then what do you see ahead for us?
Yeah, definitely over 25 years ago when I started out in the industry, it was overwhelmingly male dominated. I would go to conferences and maybe be one of 100 people in the room or 200 people in the room, be one of maybe 5 females or maybe 10, but 8 of those worked for the organization, so it was definitely a man's world. I feel like I had to prove myself, with every client, everywhere I went, I had to prove myself. The path for women was definitely not like it is today, but I'm proud that the path for women, I paved, and other women, we've paved that and helped bring it into fruition of where we are today. And I see so much opportunity today for women. There's definitely greater representation. There's mentorship. And RFG, our company, we're a female-led company, phenomenal leadership. And it's just so inspiring. And I think that as women, we bring a unique value to our clients. We're more empathetic and compassionate than men, not to down men in any way, but that's just a fact. It's the difference in male and female. And I think that it's an exciting time for women. So that's definitely a good thing. I think that today's women thinking of coming into the industry, I encourage it. Absolutely. I think there's promising changes, like there's lifestyle practices. I know of some younger advisors who they take summer off to be with their kids when they're out of school. They work really hard to get all their client. I mean, they're there and available, but they've got a team that's supporting the practice. They've taken care of all the things around the school calendar. How cool is that? And I just think that whatever you want, or if it's not raising children, it's pursuing other, personal passions. There's an opportunity unlike any other career. And I think that's a huge step forward for women.
We couldn't not agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we hear it so often from our guests that come on the show, right? Again, everybody has a different passion and a different purpose. And they've been able to create careers within this industry that fit those lifestyles, that allow them the time, space to spend it how they need to, while also taking gorgeous care of their clients.
Absolutely. And, there's a lot of talk right now about the great wealth transfer that's coming. And like 2030, it's kind of going to flip where right now men have control over more wealth. Women are going to have control over, it's estimated 67% of the wealth in America, which is huge. And that's, coming from women live longer. So they're going to be inheriting the wealth, and it's going to be with the females before it passes down to the next generation. And, women are tired of not being seen and heard. I know I keep saying that, but that's what we want. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. And I've been told before during my 25 years by my female clients, married clients, like, thank you for looking me in the eyes. Thank you for glancing at me and not just staring at my husband. How offensive is that? And especially in the South where I live and have grown up, the man has definitely been the one financially to lead most families. I don't think that women are going to tolerate that when they inherit this wealth. Matter of fact, it's estimated that they're going to leave their male advisors by the droves. They want to be with someone that they identify with. And I know personally, my gynecologist is a female. All the people that I go to care for myself, all my doctors are female. And it's weird because I didn't set out to make that happen. I just gravitated towards these relationships. So I don't think it's any different in our industry.
I literally had that conversation this morning about how fortunate I feel that all the doctors and medical people in my life, for the most part, are all women. And I can have really honest, open conversations. And that has not always been the case. And to your point, I think having conversations about our health and our bodies are very parallel to having conversations about money.
Absolutely. Wealth and health go hand in hand.
Yeah. For sure. Okay. So Marcia, we ask every guest that comes on the show, it's our favorite question. What is the best career advice that you have ever received?
Yeah, that's a great question. The best career advice I got was early on in my career, and it came from a gentleman that I was kind of a mentor to me. And he said there's magic in action. So there's magic in action. And it's a simple truth, but it kind of stuck with me. You can dream all you want, but nothing happens until you take a step. And so you just have to, make sure that you're taking a step forward. It kind of reminds me of another quote that I'm inspired by Michael Jordan. And it's a very common one, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And so it's kind of that, those two things go in my mind, like just get up and do something. And it's a reminder to take risk, to embrace change. I've certainly missed my share of the shots I've taken. I've pivoted a few times in my career, and, those moments have taught me great life lessons and skills and business lessons, and help me grow and improve and, get my business where it is today. So, that's the advice that's the best advice I got. I would pass it on to anyone else. Don't wait for perfect circumstances. Take action. Action of any kind, even a baby step, creates momentum. And with momentum, it creates opportunities. And that is kind of what I've lived for the last 25 years.
Oh, I love that. And especially the point of it doesn't have to be massive action, right? If your energy level or what you can take on right now is even just the smallest bit, just do that. Right?
Absolutely.
Oh,
I think in kind of the current climate too of people really wanting to seek change in our world, it can feel really overwhelming and tiny little things that you can do can make the biggest differences in the end. But to your point, Marcia, you have to start. You have to make a move.
Right. Absolutely. And there's so many people willing to share and help, with that. Seek out, another thing that I've always done is try to find the smartest person in the room, go talk to that person. And it's amazing to me how kind and generous people are to share, and to y'all's podcast here, WomenShare.
yeah.
It's just that most people are so gracious to want to help someone else.
That's great. That's great. Now, outside of work and your career and the success of your podcast and everything, what else can we celebrate with you today?
Well, celebrate. I guess when I hear the word celebrate, it has to be some sort of win, or some sort of good thing going on, I guess. But November, is of course the big month of gratitude. And I've been real intentional for the last while to make sure I'm grateful on a daily basis. But in November particularly, and then coming off of October being the Breast Cancer Awareness Month, y'all can celebrate with me that I'm 11 years cancer-free from breast cancer. I'm thankful, I'm grateful that, my path, my story is to live and not die. And I know so many people didn't get that out of a breast cancer diagnosis, but it's made me a better person. It's made me more intuitive and compassionate to my clients and to other people that our paths cross. And I'm grateful for that.
Wow.
We're both tearing up.
I know.
Yes.
Marcia, thank you so much for sharing that. I myself am a pre-viver. I'm a BRCA1.
Okay.
So I did a preventative, which was its own kind of massive hill to climb.
Mm-hmm.
But 11 years is amazing.
It is. I'm grateful. Very grateful. Thank you.
We are definitely celebrating that.
It's the scariest thing in the world. And I know for you, what you've been through is scary. My neighbor, that's much younger than me, just did the same thing. And this year. So she's had three different surgeries actually. And, that's a great decision though, because you don't want to go through what so many women have. So that I'm grateful for. And I'm just grateful for life in general, that we get to live in a country where we have freedoms and we can be a financial advisor, or we can be a veterinarian, or we could be a podcast host. We can do whatever,
Or all of them. Well, maybe not.
Yeah. All of the above.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
So life is good, as they say.
Yeah.
This has been a really great and uplifting conversation, Marcia. Thank you so much for coming and sharing that. If somebody is interested in following along with what you're doing and listening to the podcast, what's the best place for them to find you and connect?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. Of course, Marcia Miller, and Marcia is spelled like the Marcia Brady, like Marcia. So MARCIA. I always have to tell people that because people don't know how to pronounce my name sometimes. So I'm on LinkedIn, and also an easy way to find me because RFG is our website is kind of a long address. But Meet with Marcia is my website, so you can find me there. Meetwithmarcia.com. My office phone number is 205-795-2013. And we also have an Instagram page for if you just type in my name or RFG Advisory, Marcia, you'll find that. So love to connect with anyone.
Excellent. And we'll make sure we have those links on your profile on our website so folks can find you there.
Thank you.
But just thank you again for joining us and sharing your story, both professional and personal. It's just great.
Thank you. Such an honor. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And that's our show for today. So if ours is a mission that you want to share in, please subscribe to WomenShare on your favorite podcast platform. With that, I'm Joanna Ehresman.
And I'm Leah Alter. Thank you again to RFG Advisory for paying it forward. And we'll catch you on the next episode of WomenShare.